birthday, I live in a dream. I live in a
dream. Welcome to Only Trying to Help, the podcast where we try to help you help other people. My name is Kate Watson, and I'm here with my very good friend and colleague, Dr. Claire Lane, although we like to call her Dr. Claire Lane sometimes. Claire, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name's Claire Lane, and I live in the UK with my husband and my soon-to-be 5-year-old little boy. And in my free time, when I get some free time, I like to engage in dance fitness and Pilates and hiking. If I get a chance, I like to watch films and TV. But when I am working, my job is that I'm a clinical psychologist. And actually, Kate, I was quite pleased that you asked me to be involved with this podcast, because when you're a clinical psychologist and you've got a child and you are surrounded by other people who have children, people think that you're an expert in being a parent, and you're not. Right? I might be sometimes able to be helpful to other parents with children because I'm a professional and I can take a step back and I can think about all the textbooks I've read, and I can sit and formulate a situation and say, well, how about we try something like this? Or, do you think that something like this might work? When you're in the moment and you're being a parent, you're a human being and you're not able to do that for yourself. And so I kind of want to do this for all the clinical psychologists out there who kind of feel this weight of expectation on their shoulders, and actually sometimes place that weight of expectation upon themselves as well, because it's the first thing that you beat yourself up about every single time.
I love that. And the funny thing is, because I have a background in psychology and I'm trained as a counselor, people also ask me for parenting advice, and I always laugh because I'm like, what the hell do I know about parenting that parents don't know? Nothing. There's no secret magic book that I have. And Claire, I'm glad that you started off by saying you're so pleased to be here. I felt like I kind of roped you into this. So let me explain to the audience why I was trying to rope you into this, and it works out that you're happy to be here. But I wanted to do a series within the podcast called "Only Trying to Help My Kids," all about the things parents do when they're trying to be helpful to their children growing up. And I decided to divide it between age groups. So we'll do an episode on parenting toddlers, and we're going to do that one today. And that's why I've asked you for some help. We'll do one about parenting teens and another one about parenting young adults. But Claire, I didn't ask you because you're a psychologist. I asked you because you have a little one who's soon to be 5. So he's through those toddler years. And I just wanted you to come talk about your experiences. You, in my eyes, you happen to be a psychologist, but I think what the listeners may enjoy is just hearing about some of your experiences. So anyway, it works out that you're happy that I roped you into this.
I'm always happy to talk to you, Kate. Always.
Well, I appreciate that. So you can feel free. You can feel free to wear the mom hat. You can feel free to wear the clinical psychologist hat or whatever hat you want. But I guess I'm kind of curious. Why don't we start with what have you learned that doesn't work so well when you see your child struggling with something, you're trying to help? Where do parents sometimes go wrong, you think?
Oh, goodness. I don't know about other parents. I think your default is that you always fall back on quite often the way that you were parented or the absolute opposite of that. So if you've got some experiences of maybe things that your parents did do to try and help you and they really weren't helpful and you hated them, then perhaps you're going to try and do the exact opposite of that. Sometimes you might find yourself falling back into their habits. Now, unfortunately, what I do, and I say what I do, what I've done, and I've told myself I'm never going to do ever again, is I buy a book.
Oh, you buy a book. You buy a book. I was trying to stop you.
Yeah.
I was trying to stop you before you said it on a podcast, and it exists forever that you've told yourself you're never going to do this again, but you buy a book. Okay. So how does that go?
Absolutely terrible, right? Because what you will find very quickly if you try and buy a book is that there are thousands of different books out there on whatever topic you've got. Now, when my little boy Oscar, when he was a baby, you know, your Facebook feed is always full of stuff that's marketed at you. You know, they know you've got a young baby. Mm-hmm. I got loads of adverts about sleep programs, books for babies' sleep, books about babies crying and all sorts. And what you learn very quickly is that basically a lot of what is written in these books have worked for one person at one time, but then it's sold to you as this is the way to do it. What I've found is that whenever I try to implement advice from a book, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And whenever I try to implement advice that are on things like the National Health Service website or is given to you by a health visitor, it doesn't work. Now, I don't know why this doesn't work. It could be because those interventions completely go against me and the kind of person that I am. Or maybe they just kind of completely go against the kind of person my kid is. I don't know. But, you know, with what I'm going to talk about today, you'll know why when I say I'm never going to buy another book ever again, right?
I'm gonna hold you to that, Claire. I'm gonna hold you to that. And it's a good thing for me to know as your friend that I should also not buy you books about parenting.
Actually, you did buy me a book about parenting, and that one was pretty good. That one was pretty good. Yeah.
I don't even remember. Yeah. What book did I buy you about parenting?
Hang on a second. I've just got to remember the exact title.
Was it Go the Fuck to Sleep?
No, you did get me that. That wasn't a guide on parenting, though. That was a story. It was something. Oh, I gave it to my sister. Calm the fuck down.
I knew the F word was in there somewhere.
It was called Calm the Fuck Down. And actually, that was quite a good book.
Okay.
You know?
Well,
I might look at that one again.
There we go. But I do appreciate your point about books. I know someone who is a father of a 7-year-old. So we're not quite talking toddlers right this moment, but just in general, he said to me, I've read all the books, Kate. Okay. And he said, the trouble is they leave me confused because every book says something different. And then you could read 5 books and then you're left wondering, well, which book do I listen to? Because book number 1 says the opposite of book number 2. And I just laughed when he said this. And he looked at me like, why are you laughing? I said, because all these assholes just think they know and all just wrote a book and you went and bought them all. And it's just somebody's ideas out there. I looked at him and I said, you know, you could write a book about parenting. And he laughed at me. I said, but you could, and many people do, and that's the problem. But go ahead, Claire. I think I jumped in there a little bit.
That's all right. No, that's absolutely fine. So basically, the thing that I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to take a sip of wine before I do this. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is quite a taboo subject, actually, and it's something that I think a lot of parents struggle with. A lot of parents don't talk about because there's so much shame attached to it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about potty training.
Oh, I'm so glad, because honestly, my worry setting up this series was that maybe everybody who came on each episode would just say the same things. And I don't think potty training is going to come up when we talk about teenagers or young adults.
No.
So this is good.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
Okay. Good. Take it away.
Yeah. So, I mean, potty training was probably the one bit of parenting that I was really nervous about. And, you know, I remember it being incredibly traumatic. And I remember thinking, I don't want this to be like this for my kid, you know,
Mhm.
but I don't really know what to do, but I don't want it to be like that. And so I thought, well, one thing that has always gone really well with Oscar is when I've let him take the lead on things. And so I thought, you know, we're not going to do anything until he tells me that
Mhm.
he's ready to start wanting to do that. You know, I'm just gonna step completely away from it. And actually that was quite comfortable for me because it meant that I got to avoid it as well, which was nice. I could avoid it for as long as I needed to, and then I'd face up to it when I had to.
Mhm.
And then suddenly there did come a day. And the day came when I was not expecting it. You know, I had everything ready. I knew that this was a possibility. So, you know, I had the potty, I had the toilet seat, I had the pants, you know, I had everything ready to go. And we were out on a shopping trip. And he suddenly says to me, Mummy, I want to go for a wee and I want to do it in the toilet. And I'm like, okay, all right. And so I took him to a local supermarket.
Mhm.
And then he said, take the nappy off and leave it off, Mummy. I don't want to wear them anymore. And I'm like, okay.
How did you feel? Nervous?
Nervous, but kind of confident because I thought,
Okay.
actually, if this is what he's wanting, and I know that I'm in for a long road and it's going to be hard.
Mhm.
But, you know, if he can tell me when he's wanting to go, and I said, why do you want to get rid of the nappies? And he said, I want to wear pants like Logan, who's one of his little friends. And I'm like, okay, all right. So do you think that you can manage this? And so basically he went commando all the way home. And I got home and we put some pants on him and we told his dad. And, you know, he was kind of partly ready for it, but he wasn't quite ready to start telling us when he needed the loo. And, you know, I kind of expected this, but, you know, it was hard work. It was
Yeah.
definitely hard work those few days. And, you know, we kind of backed and forthed a few times. You know, all the books tell you don't back and forth, just stick with it. But actually, we backed and forthed because
Okay.
actually, you need to prepare yourself to be ready for this.
Yeah.
Right. And so we backed and forth a couple of times and then thought, no, we're going to run with this. And so we ran with it. And, you know, my little boy, he did not make this easy, you know, and the reason he didn't make it easy is because from what I can understand, and I think it's something that he still kind of grapples with a little bit now, but he's kind of coming around to the idea. He thinks that when you go to the toilet it should be on your terms. You
Mhm.
know, you should go when you want to go rather than when you need to go.
He's a little too empowered.
He's a little bit too empowered. Yeah. Yeah. And the trouble is trying to explain this to a 3-year-old, you know, it's impossible. It's really, really hard, you know.
Yeah.
What he could see was mummy getting flustered, daddy getting angry, and, you know, mummy bought a book, which she left on the shelf and actually didn't touch because I opened up one of the pages and it started talking about reward charts. Okay. Now, I'm a psychologist. I should be cool with things like reward charts and stuff. I'm not cool with reward charts. We are not a reward chart family. And I could blow out the whole of this episode talking about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. But I won't. We're just, you know, that's just not the way that we do things, and we've never done things in that way. And I thought, oh, do you know what? I don't think this is the book for me, and I left it on the side. Oh dear. And then then my little boy starts basically stool withholding. Okay. Now this is a behavior that then carried on for well over a year. Right. And I'm like, you know, eventually this shit has to come out, right? And it's going to come out one way or another. You know, and it's going to be unpleasant and it's going to be hard work, but you know, it's just going to have to be as it is, because the only way he's going to get on top of this is to come through it himself. You know. And my other half couldn't cope with that, and so my other half picked up the book, and he tells me he read the book, It turns out he didn't really read the book. He just kind of read a bit of the book and didn't really read it properly. So one day I'm working in the office and I get an irate husband storming through the door who says, right, okay, this is what we're going to do. You know, if he's going to poo, you know, we've got to do something to encourage him to get this out. And I said, I really don't think that that's going to work with our kid. And he said, well, according to this book, which it says on the front is written by an expert, and incidentally, it's a book that you bought, I'm going to follow the book. And I said, well, what does it say? It says it has to be a big and meaningful reward. So basically, I'm going to start giving him a toy car every time that he does a poo. And I said, I'm telling you, this is a really bad idea. It can't be a bad idea because it says it right here in your book. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't picked up that book and read it. I think I might need to read it because I don't think that it would have said that. It says it. I've read it. You haven't. This is what I'm doing. And so I just looked at him and just kind of went, well, if I just feel like I need to tell you that you're about to get yourself into a big fat mess. And I want to make it clear that I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to be able to get you back out of it again. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I don't care. You know, I can't sit with this, you know. And so he does this and it works like a dream, you know. And at one point we were getting 4 poos a day, you know.
Because he wanted 4 cars a day.
Absolutely. And then he kind of comes in and he goes, you know, I can't keep up with the demand. And I said, well, I think you're going to have to buy a bigger box of cars then, aren't you? Because I don't know how to get you out of this. Mm-mm. And so, you know, he buys a big box of cars and then he's like, you know what, this can't continue. And I said, yeah. And then one night he said, I'm really sorry. I think I need you to get me out of this.
And how?
Well, I told him to go and pour me a large gin and tonic.
Smart. Yep. Mm-hmm.
While I quietly seethed in the corner of the room. And I said, you know, you've got me. And he said, I've got something else to tell you as well. I didn't read the book properly. And I said, I'm not surprised you didn't read the book properly. What did the book actually say? And he said, well, it said a big reward. What I didn't realize is what they meant is a bigger sticker.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, they use sticker charts. He goes, sticker charts are shit. You know, that's never going to work with our kid. And I said, I know that. That's why I didn't read the book.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. That's why you weren't going down that path.
Yeah. And so I just sat there and, you know, I knocked back this gin and tonic and I said, okay, right. So here's what we're going to do. You've got the rest of that box of cars upstairs. I said, we're just going to give him the entire box of cars and say, well done for a good job. And we're going to start from scratch. And he's like, okay. And then what ensued was probably a good 6 to 8 months of Oscar kind of holding on to wheeze, holding on to poos, having accidents left, right and centre and da, which, you know, you say, well, that's to be expected. But actually, when you're having to deal with it day in, day out, it becomes the bane of your life, you know, and they go off to the childminder or they go off to a play group or they go off somewhere when you're all out with your friends and it happens. And it's just like, oh, my God. And, you know, there were times when it was better. And each time it's better, you tell yourself, oh, great, he's cracked it. That's it, he's cracked it. Potty training isn't linear like that. I mean, maybe for some kids it is, but not for my kids. Mm-hmm. And there was a day when me and Oscar, we quite often sit and have little chats. And he was telling me that he thought I was the best mummy in the world. And I said, you know, I think maybe there's some things that I don't get right. He goes, yeah, but you always say sorry, mummy. And I said, but do you know what I haven't said sorry for? I think when you were learning to use pants and learning to use the toilet, I didn't do a good job because this is a job that I've never done before. You know? And when you do a job for the first time and you've never done it before, it's hard. And he said, like learning to use the toilet, Mummy. And I said, exactly. I said, it's hard learning to use the toilet. Can you imagine how hard it is trying to teach somebody to learn to use the toilet if you've not done that before? And he said, well, Mummy, you know, I think it would be nice. You know, there's this one Hot Wheels monster truck that I really, really want. And I think that if I can show you how well I can use the toilet for a whole week, I could get this monster truck. And, you know, I think that actually worked really well. So what he's actually doing at this point is he's bargaining with me, saying, hang on a minute, you know, I'm up to doing this thing that I wasn't up to doing a few months ago. And actually, this toilet training thing is still extrinsically motivated for me, because I feel like I'm making all these efforts and I don't get any reward for it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of sat back and I thought, this is really interesting. Now, what do I do with this? And what my head was saying was, don't dare go anywhere near this. Don't go anywhere near this.
It seems a little suspicious.
What my heart was saying was, bless him, you know, he's making a real effort here. What do I do? And so I sat there and I said, yeah, but what happens after you've got the monster truck? And he goes, well, you know, I could do the same again and I could get another one. And I said, no. I said, if you want to do this, this is the way that it works. You do that. And yes, I'll give you a monster truck, but after that, no more rewards. Okay, I expect you to do this all the time. And he said, okay, Mummy. And he was a bloody angel for the whole of that week. You know, he was going when he needed to. And I'm like, you know, this is amazing. I'm really proud of you for being able to do this. And so he gets his monster truck. So what's the first thing that he does? He wets himself.
Oh, no.
And then the next day he wets himself. And I sat down and I said to him, do you remember what our deal was? Do you remember what our agreement was? You know, sometimes you need to go at times when you want to be doing something else, but you need to stop and you need to go. And you've proved to me that you can do that. Now, if you don't do that, the monster truck is going. And my husband was just like, you know what? We were staying at my mum's over the summer and we'd had like a weekend in London. And, you know, all the time there was this undercurrent of friction and annoyance coming from my husband because he couldn't handle the fact that Oscar hadn't been for a poo, right? And Oscar was, of course, was picking up on it and reacting to it. And, you know, I just kind of sat with him that evening when we got back to my mum's and I thought, I'm just going to try something completely different. It might not work, but actually I think it might work. So it's worth giving it a go. And I said, I really think that you need to go. And he said, but why do you think that I need to go? And I said, well, first of all, you look grumpy. And usually that's one of the signs to me that you want to go, because there isn't any reason for you being grumpy at the moment. You look uncomfortable. You can't sit still. And I'm a bit concerned about you. I said, but you know, how has it felt with Daddy being grumpy with you about this? And he said, oh, it's been horrible. And how does it make you feel about Daddy? I feel angry with him, Mummy. I'm really angry with him. I said, does that make you want to hold it in a little bit more? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, yeah. So you're telling him loud and clear that you don't want him to be in control of when you go. You want to be in control of when you go. I said, would you like to get him back? And he went, yeah. And I said, well, do you know one thing that Daddy really, really hates to do? And he said, what's that? And I said, he really hates having to clean your bum. And I said, so, you know, what would really make this a brilliant day and would get him back was if you went to the toilet right now and you did your poo and you forced Daddy to wipe your bum. And this little face, he had a smile from ear to ear, went off to the toilet, dropped what I can only compare to like a flaming German U-boat or something down the toilet and screamed, Daddy, come and wipe my bum right now. And my husband was just kind of like stood there with his eyes wide open. And I looked at him and I went, stick your syrup of figs up your ass and go and wipe Oscar's. And basically, Kate, this has really, really worked. And, you know, there are the odd days when he holds it in, but actually Now, my husband gets involved in the game a little bit and says, no, I'm going out. I'm going to go and hide, which, you know, he's like, no, mummy, you've got to make him do it. You've got to make him wipe it. And it's worked, you know?
Yeah, I mean, playing with power and control can be very interesting. And it seems that you've gotten to the heart of the matter for him.
And it's not in a, I won't swear, it's not in a book. You don't find this stuff written in a book.
Not until you write the book.
I'm not writing a book. My God, it's bad enough that I'm talking about this on a podcast. I'm not documenting it in writing as well. Oh my goodness. But, you know, all those months of stress and everything. But, you know, I don't think it was just that. I think it was also that he'd matured to the point that you could level with him in that way.
Yeah.
You know, 6 months before, there's no way that I could have leveled with him.
One of the things that I think is really interesting, there's maybe two things I think really interesting about the story. One is that there was that moment where he had earned the monster truck. So he showed you what he was capable of doing. And I think a lot of parents miss that. And then when their child goes on to struggle with something, they say, oh, maybe my kid can't do this thing that we're trying to do. Maybe my kid isn't there yet, or isn't ready yet, or isn't capable. And I think we all need to recognize the times when our kids do things that they are capable of doing when they are properly inspired to do so. And I'm using the word inspired because it could take many forms. It could take many forms. And then when they later on do not perform the same behaviors that you wanted them to perform, it's not that they're incapable. It's that they're choosing not to in that moment. And I think that's an important distinction. And I watch a lot of parents I don't want to say make excuses. Let me try that again. I watch a lot of parents struggle with, what can my kid do? What is my child really capable of? And I want to say, if you've seen them do it before, they're capable of doing it now. Maybe not every day, maybe not with consistency, but there is a capability there. They have performed in this way before. They can perform in this way again. The other thing, Claire, is the way that you let Oscar see you make mistakes and you talk to him about mistakes, I think is really beautiful, because you're creating an environment where now the family is not expected to be perfect, and the family can talk about, you know, I guess I didn't really read the book the right way. You know, we can kind of admit when we haven't done things perfectly. And I think that is something that will pay dividends when he's a little bit older.
Yeah, and I think actually it's always the way that I operate, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
always think if you can talk about things even when they're really little, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I think if you can talk about when you get it wrong and you can talk about the fact that actually you're fallible as a human being, I think it makes it okay for them to be
Yeah.
fallible as well. And, you know, just thinking when you were kind of reflecting there, one thing that when particularly you've got toddlers, preschoolers, and their language is quite good, and actually a lot of the time when they're able to kind of do things as you'd like them to do them, and you're able to reason with them a little bit, you kind of forget that they're really little, and their way of thinking and their logic is not the same as perhaps a 7 or an 8-year-old or an adult. You forget that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big mistakes that we made through this whole fiasco is that we quite often been able to reason with Oscar on a really, really basic level. But, you know, through this, it was very, very obvious that we couldn't reason and use logic with him in the same way, because that's just not where he was at. That's not, he hasn't grown enough brain for that yet, you know. You find yourself sitting there thinking, oh, come on, you bloody stupid psychologist, you know, you've forgotten like your neuro and your child development here, you know. But, you know, you kind of get caught up in it and you forget, you know. And even now I sometimes forget that he's not even quite 5 yet, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, you know, having those frank conversations, but keeping in mind he may not be grasping all of the things that you're saying is a nice balance. It's essentially a way for you as a parent to practice having these conversations. And if he gets 20% of it, cool. And then in 2 years, when you have this same kind of conversation again, maybe he'll get 40% of it. But all along the way, you as a parent are practicing how to talk about making mistakes and how to talk about growing as a person and doing better next time. And you're getting the practice talking about it with him. So as he ages and he's gradually understanding more of what you're saying, you'll be so good at it by the time he's grasping 99% of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to, I think it's important. I don't mean that I think everybody has to do it that way, but I think it's something that works for us.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, is there anything else that you'd like us to know before we start to shift gears? Or is a 30 to 40-minute poo story really, really your contribution today? Because I'm happy with that. I'm perfectly happy with that.
Oh dear. I'd just like to say that actually I am a really good psychologist. I don't work with kids most of the time. I'm trained to work with kids and I can, but yeah, don't be put off having a session with me because I am quite good.
I honestly think the opposite is going to happen. People are going to start calling and writing to me saying, how do I get an appointment with Dr. Claire Lane? Absolutely.
What you do is you turn up with a glass of wine and we just sit there and say, oh, fuck's sake, this parenting shit is really hard. It's really hard.
Typically after I release an episode, Claire, I take little quotes from the episode and I put it on social media. So I think for you, there's going to be a little quote from Dr. Claire Lane that says, oh shit, this parenting shit is really fucking hard.
I am happy for you to quote me on that. In fact, that will be the name of my parenting book.
Yeah. I hope it is.
Yeah. I've written down, when do things go wrong? I've got things here. It always goes wrong when I follow instructions from a book or from a health professional. It always goes wrong when I'm letting my own gain inform my choices. It always goes wrong if I go against my gut instincts, and everything about this potty training went against my gut instincts. And the other thing is, it always goes wrong when my frontal lobes are aching.
See, this as you were going through the list, I was thinking, oh, this is perfect. I could see it on a poster or like a fridge magnet, or this is so helpful. And then I thought, by the last one, now we have to explain to people how to know if your frontal lobes are aching. Oh dear, I was thinking about this earlier because I've noticed that lately I'm getting like really grumpy within them and I'm feeling really, really tired. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, when they're toddlers, your frontal lobes ache because you're having to basically behave as their frontal lobes because they've got no impulse control or anything there, right? It's a different kind of exhaustion because basically you're firefighting all the time. You're being your own frontal lobes, you're being their frontal lobes, but they still nap at that point. So you get like an hour and a half off going to recover. I thought I had no clue what you meant until you just described it that way. And now I'm sitting here going, oh, I know exactly what that means. When you have to be the grown up for yourself and for someone else. Listen, you don't need to have a toddler to know that feeling. We all have been around someone who acts
who's
like
falling to pieces, or is not in a good place, or
and you've had to be the calm, reasonable, rational, steady figure for that person and for yourself at the same time. So now I totally get what you mean. Frontal lobes aching.
I think what a toddler kind of brings is, with the lack of impulse control, you're looking out for hazards, you're looking for them running towards a hazard, and there's all of that as well. And but where he's at the moment, because he's about sort of 4 or 5 years old. He's got the impulse control. But what he's also developed is an idea of how he thinks the problem needs to be solved, and he can't hold himself back from the impulse of wanting to sort it out, even though he doesn't necessarily have the dexterity to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, right, wait for mummy. No, because I can see what I need to do. No. But another thing that he does to me is from the second that he wakes up to the second that he goes to bed, he's full of questions constantly.
I can't handle it.
And it's almost like, from the second that you're awoken in bed, it's like question 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like having somebody asking you to quote the Encyclopedia Britannica from the second that you wake up. And I think after about 2 hours, that's when I start to get grumpy and I start to get fatigued. And when you're trying to do something at the same time, like let's just say you're trying to drive a car, or you're trying to make a cup of coffee, or, you're trying to sort something out, you're trying to get yourselves out the door at the same time, it's kind of like an extra layer of exhaustion. And I think what I'm trying to say is that with kids, you kind of just get into a groove of how you handle it, and you get into a groove of how you handle a situation, and you get into a routine and a groove, and you know what you're going to do, and then the sands shift. But the trouble is they don't shift necessarily particularly fast. It's like you don't realize they've shifted, and they have. And that kind of leads to, particularly with sort of toddlers and preschoolers, 1 minute everything's working fine, and the next just shouting at them constantly for about 3 days. And you're like, what's going on? This is not the kind of parent that I want to be. I suppose that's one good place where your psychological skills come in, because you're like, something isn't working here. I need to take a step back and think about what's happening.
Yeah. Self-awareness is probably one thing that you have some more practice with compared to maybe your average person.
Yeah. But I wouldn't have said that necessarily makes it any easier or any more obvious sometimes, because sometimes it can take me weeks to realize, oh, actually, do you know what? This just ain't working.
Well, that could also be the title of your book. This just ain't working.
This shit ain't working. This shit ain't working, and my frontal lobes are aching.
I'm going to be the first one to buy this book when it's on Amazon.
Oh my God, no, I can't put it in a book. I don't read books, not anymore.
And, I'm thinking so many of the things on that list probably will become themes through all of the episodes where we talk about parenting. But each of these things that you've spoken about may have a particular twist based on age group of each kid. So this has been fantastic. When all of the piles of fan mail come in with your name on them, I will be sure to send them your way. And I just want to thank you so much for doing this.
Take me in your arms. I don't want to miss a day without you. Let's stay young forever. There is nothing we can't do. And nothing can break us apart when we're together. Facing the sky, we know that we can fly on the wings of love. And we can climb on every mountain top. I never knew eternity so real till I met you. Since that day I live in a dream.